Every man for himself, God for all. Have you heard that phrase before? What does it mean to you? There have been conversations around HR team leads that once there is a problem, they would single out the HR team member and sort of put that person out as a sacrificial. Is that you? What do you think about that? Is that appropriate? Welcome to the HR Growth Network podcast with Olutoyin Williams. I am pleased to be your host. In this special series of podcast episodes, we're looking at the traits and the characteristics that will help a senior HR person to accelerate their career and get into more senior roles. Welcome. In this episode, we're going to be talking about standing up for your team. In your HR team, I am sure you devolve responsibilities. When KPIs are to be met, you sort of, discuss what the target is, and we all discuss how to go about it, and people take responsibility for it. Of course, with the best of intentions, sometimes things don't work out the way we thought they would. And because of that, there might be some hard conversations that we need to have. How do you manage this? How do you represent your team in SMT meetings? How do you represent the activities of your team when you're speaking to senior management about the HR results of the organization? Do you single out team members to identify them as the persons who are responsible for something not working? Do you single out team members to identify them as the persons who are responsible for exceptional results that have been produced? Do you share the limelight with others? Or are you that HR leader who is afraid to share the limelight, lest they carry the limelight away? That should not be you. This series of podcasts is created specifically to support you to be able to navigate more senior roles. Now, the emphasis is on more senior roles. It would be impossible for you to move up in your HR career if you're still holding on tenaciously to the current role you're doing. That's not to say you should abdicate your responsibilities. However, this means you have to understand how to share the limelight. And of course, when there are challenges with the results we were hoping to get, how do we gear up everyone to be ready for more activities? How do we address if there is a performance issue within the team? That is the focus of this podcast episode. So let's get into it. Do you allow your team members to actually take responsibility for their actions? Or do you smother them and not allow them to take responsibility for their actions? What do you do? Calling from the experience of the HR leads that I have worked with, it is appropriate for you to allow people to take responsibility for their actions. So, for example, we have said that we're going to have a target, a recruitment target of hiring X individuals within X time frame. And you have someone who's responsible for talent acquisition within your team. And for some reason, that target was not met. Now, I'm not going to dig into your performance management process and start asking how often do you have your keep in touch meetings and things like that. I'm not going to dig into that. We're just going to fast forward to the part where this target was not met. And the question I'm going to ask you is, how do you manage that conversation? Do you allow the person the opportunity to sort of explain how they got there? Or are you too upset with how we look in front of management to be able to take on, the appropriate feedback that conversation might allow you to take on because you listened? Let's move forward to another situation. Let's imagine that the organization has set a target and HR has supported to meet that target in a very, very impactful way. In particular, a team member has been responsible for that result. Do you celebrate that team member? Do you allow them to take glory for the effort? Or do you represent them on that occasion? If you're interested in really accelerating your career, you must learn the art of allowing those two situations to play itself out naturally. What do I mean by that? If a team member has done something exceptionally well, please be the first person to notify management of it and single out this person for the appropriate praise that they deserve on this occasion. And this is because you really want to build a culture where hard work, where merit is celebrated, and people are recognized for the results that they bring. They are recognized for the efforts that they put in, and you are leading the charge in that recognition. You're not going to try and say, oh, the person worked with me. No, this is not the time for that conversation. This is the time to allow that person to be properly celebrated for the efforts that they have put in order to be able to get the results that the business is looking for. That's what you should do on that occasion. However, let's talk about a situation where your HR team member has done something they should not have done. Our results are less than stellar, and you really need to address this issue. Is it a performance issue? Is it an ongoing performance issue? Is it a one-off performance challenge? Is it an attitude problem that has resulted in this? How do you address it? Personally, I would always advise the rule: praise in public, chastise in private. Call that person into a conversation with you and try to understand how they got there. What were the circumstances that surrounded this challenge? How did we get here? What could we have done better? And you really want to understand from that person's perspective, what do they think could have been done better in order to arrive at a better result? Allow them the opportunity to speak, but in private. And if you want to communicate how you feel about the situation, choose your words carefully. Why? Remember, if you have watched the video or you have listened to the podcast on reframing negative situations, you don't want to put them in a situation where this particular situation begins to translate into a negative situation they then need to reframe later on. So what you want to do is really place the situation appropriately. What happened? What happened on this situation? What happened? How can we help this situation from reoccurring again? What can we learn from this situation? Remember that particular performance, especially if it's not a reoccurring performance issue, it's not an indication of their performance, except again, we're contextualizing. If it's a one-off performance issue, it's not a reflection of their capability, is not a predictor of their future performance, and is certainly not a label on their current capability or their current performance. It's just a case of we dropped the ball. So how can you help them to take responsibility for dropping the ball without making this into something that it is not? Because as a line manager, you have the responsibility to help your line reports, your HR team members navigate unpleasant situations like this. It's a difficult conversation, but it's a difficult conversation that you need to have. So choose your words carefully. Address the situation in isolation of the person. Address the situation in isolation of the person. Try to understand all of the factors that could have resulted in this performance, this less than stellar performance. And more importantly, how do we support? How do we provide the support? What is required of you as the line manager in order to be able to support this person to perform better? And once that is done, we lay it to rest. We lay it to rest. As senior HR people, we are indeed charged with the development of our team members. And it is such a weighty responsibility that I don't take lightly, and I don't want you to take lightly. How you commend, how you reprimand, how you support them to grow is so critical for their development. You don't want to be that line manager that reins it. So these are the tips that I wanted to share with you today. How do you manage your team? And then when your team does something that is less than stellar, how do you represent them in front of management? Do you sort of just shift aside and allow them to take the blame for it? Or do you actually take responsibility of those results? Whilst you're trying to navigate into more senior HR roles, you really have to be very careful of how you're managing the current team that you have now. I hope this episode has been really impactful for you. This series of episodes are episodes that are specially curated for senior HR professionals who are looking to accelerate their career into the next stage of visibility. If you would love to get more information on how to get into the HR Growth Network and get one-on-one coaching with me, please check out our website, www.olutoyinwilliams.co.uk, and navigate to programs. You can find this podcast as well as other episodes of it either on Spotify or on YouTube. Happy to take your comments, suggestions, or your questions. Till I come your way again next time, do take care. Bye.